we all doing? You guys enjoy that game? Are we ready for Halloween? I mean, it's just over a month away. Halloween fans? Are we fans of Halloween? Fans of the candy, if nothing else? Okay. What's your favorite candy? So, what? Snickers, M&Ms. Okay, what's your... Twix? Yeah, I'm a big fan of Twix. Now, do you like the regular caramel or you like peanut butter? Yeah, I was just say, I'm a big fan of Twix. Who in here has played or is familiar with at least Mario Kart? Oh, yeah. Right? So, man, Mario Kart's been out a long time. I'm old and it's been out even before, I won't say before I was born, but it's been out a long time. I mean, so we used to play all the time in college back when it was on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, the SNES. Then we played on N64, and so yeah, we got some music running. Do you guys ever remember, like, they almost always have a desert level, right? The dry desert and all that stuff. So, you know, we've been talking about Moses and Beyond Belief, and this is week 4 of Beyond Belief. And when you're playing Mario Kart, as fun as it is, like, it's always great to be on the side where you have whatever special little, you know, turtle or bullet or, you know, blue shell, whatever, and you're the one firing it, right? But what if you're playing with friends and you're not even in first and they're taking you out, right? Or they send the blue shell or the bullet that hits everything in its path. You're like, what did I do, right? I mean, it's kind of, one, it's kind of fun, and I mean, it's also, like I said, if you're on the shooting side, it's great. But if you're on the receiving side, you kind of feel betrayed, right? You're like, why would my friends, like, seriously, you just stabbed me in the back. And life gets that way sometimes. Right? Have you ever been let down by people who played an important role in your life? Whether it be friends, family, even celebrities or sports, icons you look up to. You find out they're kind of a jerk, or they get in trouble for things. You're like, okay, not good people. That happens, right? And the unfortunate thing, if it happens over and over, it happens a lot. We can sometimes we start looking at what's going on around us, and we can compare it to our relationship with God. It's like, is that how our relationship with God works too? Is he always going to be there for us, or at some point will he let us down? Will he betray us? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and from the view and learning from the Israelites and the story of Moses, and kind of what he did for them. So I guess the question is, what do we do when we have doubts in our life? What do we do? Like, how do we compare what's going on with us and what we know from our past, and like what we've read in Scripture, what we've been taught, and what does the Bible tell us, and what can we learn about God's character? So if we look at Moses' life, and we're talking about, we're in Exodus, which who knows what Exodus means? Yeah, okay, it's an interesting word. So basically, the Exodus was the time when they were escaping from Egypt, right? Genesis was the beginning of all things. Exodus we're talking about the escape from Egypt. And if you think about it, up to this time, and we talked about it over the last several weeks, the Israelites had been slaves for years and years. And I don't mean just 4 or 5, but like years and years they've been slaves, right? At this point, they're free. They are finally free from slavery. They're finally free from, the taskmasters they had. They went through the plagues that, God used through Moses to kind of help get their freedom. And they've been chased by an army. They've gone through the middle of the Red Sea, which was parted for them. And now they're in the desert, and they're looking around. They're like, what is going on? Because we don't have food. And they start grumbling and complaining, and they look at Moses and Aaron. They're upset, like, you guys aren't taking care of us. You've brought us out here. Yeah, you got us out of all that other stuff, but look, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? Anybody here ever been hangry? Right, pretty much, right? I don't know when this word came into our vocabulary, but if you're not familiar with it, you're so hungry you get agitated, angry, and it's a real thing. It's the same thing with how many people have ever been so hot, right? You're getting more irritable because of the heat, right? It's just so they're out in the middle of the desert, they're hungry and they're hot, so you can imagine what's going on, all the grumbling, all the complaining, and ultimately, what are they doing? Right? What are they doing? they're focusing on their circumstances. They're focusing on, oh, and we do this too. And this is why this message is relevant to us. We do this too. We forget to look at all the blessings we have in our life, and we focus on the negative things. We focus on our circumstances. And when it comes to God, sometimes we wonder, like, we're going through all this stuff. Does he see it? Does he know? Does he care? Did he lead us to this situation just to leave us? Like, what's going on? And when we get to that point, we start questioning God's character. It can lead to even asking, is there really a God? Right? We can potentially get to that point. And the Israelites, and we're not going to talk about their entire journey today, but they did this multiple times. And if you look through the history, it was basically a cycle of them being in trouble, God bailing them out, them forgetting about it and complaining and turning away from God, and then all of a sudden some good leader comes back and leads them back to God, and God's like, I'm here for you, always have been, gets them out of trouble again, and it just keeps on going, the same kind of cycle. And if you think about it, unfortunately, we kind of do the same thing today. Whether it's as a society or as individuals, we will have moments when we're like, why is this happening to me? Right? We focus on our circumstances. We get kind of the woe is me, and we don't look at all the blessings that we've had in our past. We don't look at everything that God has gotten us through. I've been on mission trips in a couple different countries, and what's always interesting is we go there and we're doing our best to bless them. A lot of times we'll do VBSs with orphanages because, again, those kids are, they're in a third world country, so they're less privileged than we are anyway. And then they're also in an orphanage. And orphanages are a little different and sometimes in other countries. They're not necessarily kids who don't have parents or don't have people at home. Some of them even have homes. But the orphanages are a place they can go and get additional resources, food, someone that, additional people that will also give them additional love and care. But what's always interesting when you go down there with the church leaders down there, we're missionaries, if you will, short-term missionaries, and they always talk, and we talk about how we're going to pray for them, and that we just ask God's blessing on them, and for obviously health, and having the food and the strength that they need to get through, and how God will multiply. But on more than one occasion, one of them has turned and said, we're going to be praying for you too, because with your all's abundance in America, you sometimes lose sight of all the true blessings you have. You get focused on what you don't have, and you get caught up in the comparison game, and so it actually causes negativity in your life and stress and anxiety where you think God really isn't there because you may not have as much as other people, or you may not have exactly what they have, or God's blessed them more than He has me. And it was really kind of eye-opening because it's true. We do get caught up in those things. And so to take us back to the Israelites, they're in that situation and they're focusing on where they were as opposed to what God had done for them, getting them out of slavery. So if we look at Exodus 16, 2 and 3, and I highlighted this the wrong color because I cannot read it now. Oh, Paul, hold please. We're at 16, 2, 3. Okay, so in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if we only had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. They used to sit out pots of meat, and we used to eat all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into the desert, and this entire assembly have led this entire assembly to death. Okay, so they're going a little extreme, but again, they're looking around and they're focused on their circumstances, and they forget how quickly they forget that they were slaves and they were beaten on, and they had literally taskmasters that had whips that were cracking them across their back or their head or whatever. They were beaten, they were scarred, and really they were starving even then. They weren't taken very good care of. God has given them freedom, but yet they're focusing on the negatives. They're focusing on the circumstances. They're focusing on the fact that, yes, they are hungry. I mean, we all get hungry. How many people have actually have had to skip more than a couple meals in your life, right? Most of you probably haven't. Most of you probably get two, or at least two, if not three, or even more, and all the snacks you want to. But on occasion, we've had to miss a few meals. So, I mean, it's the hunger is real. And we already talked about being hot. Like, I can't stand being too hot. I would rather be slightly cold than overly hot. And if people get hot, they get irritable. They've done multiple studies where they put people in rooms, they crank up the heat, and they start fighting like cats and dogs. But they took the focus off of what, God's character. So I guess the question is, for us and for them at the time, do you think they had a right to complain? Do you think we have a right to complain? So who thinks it's fair that they were complaining? Like that they are like, look, we're hungry, we haven't had enough food, we don't have enough water. You let us out in the middle of the desert, we don't know where we're going. Like it's fair to complain. Like we have a right to complain. Nobody? So I guess the thing to ask yourself then is, then why do we do the same thing on time? Like we complain. I'll raise my hand and say I do it too. There are times I get caught up. I drive a lot for work. So most of my pet peeves are on the road. Pet peeves are just things that irritate me. And I need the roadways to be working. And right now during the summer there's always a lot of construction. There's always, and look, there's just idiots on the road. As you guys get older, I shouldn't call people idiots. But like some of them just are. It's just the truth. But when you guys start driving, just don't be that person. Follow the rules of the road. It'll help everyone. But something will happen, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me, right? My focus is on me. My focus is on what the circumstances, not focus on, oh, you know what? It's okay. Everything's gonna be fine. I wonder if someone's safe. Like it could have been an accident. Someone could be hurt. But I get self-centered. I focus on, and that's what the Israelites were doing. But the biggest thing is, I still, because I've matured enough, I don't focus on, oh, God doesn't like me. God's not caring for me. He's not going to help me get where I need to go as quickly as possible. We do that a lot, though. And if we can catch ourselves doing it, we can change that. We can change those choices, and we don't have to do that. That's the beauty of all this. And hopefully, while some of the Israelites would learn this, and over the years, more and more would learn it, it's just something we need to train ourselves. We have the choice to, we can make that choice on whether or not we're going to doubt how God feels about us based on our circumstances. And it's very important, because ultimately, it will reduce your stress, your anxiety. It'll help boost your worth in the eyes of others, and especially God, right? God loves you more than anyone ever is going to. So they go to Moses, they go to Aaron, and they're complaining. So they, again, when we start to believe these things, it can sometimes lead to even doubting God. So let's see what God does, right? And I think the two big things is that God doesn't punish them for complaining, right? It just, when we do that, when the Israelites were doing this, and when we do it ourselves, it just shows our humanity. And God knows. I mean, He created us. He knows we're going to have these doubts. He knows we're going to have these questions. He knows we're going to be confused and angry and mad at times. It doesn't make Him upset. He loves us so much, and He is so patient with us. He doesn't get upset at us, right? There have been times in my life, even recently, the last few years, I was unemployed for a decent amount of time, and I had some questions. And God's okay with that. He's like, He is a perfect, loving Father that is okay with our questions. He's okay with our doubts, as long as we are willing to hear His answers and take a look around, like how He responds. And here in the story, the way He responds is, He's like, okay, and He tells Moses, I'm going to provide. And you guys, have you ever heard of the term manna? All right. So manna, a lot of times you'll hear it in this phrase, manna from heaven. I believe it was even in Finding Nemo, although it was under the sea. There's a couple crabs out of a little pipe, and I remember that because it was one of the first movies that we watched with my son when he was little. And manna from heaven. So God literally dropped bread, a special kind of bread, out of the sky so they could eat it every day. And he gave them instructions on what to do and what have you. And it clearly was a miracle from God. Like that, and that's the way a lot of times God will do things. We'll ask for things. We'll ask for, we just want food. And what He gave them, manna was a special type of bread that had spices and honey that they as slaves would never have had access to. So it tasted to them better than anything they'd ever tasted. It was so much better than any food they'd ever had. And one of the miraculous properties of it was all they needed to eat to sustain them. It gave them everything they needed. It wasn't, we talk about balanced diets a lot these days, right? It gave them everything, all the protein, all the nutrients, everything they would need to be sustained, because it was from God. And like that was the point, is if you rely on me, if you rely on the things that come from me, I will take care of you. I will provide for you. You'll never have to doubt. And so He took compassion on them, and He did this. And he gave them manna. And again, He didn't just give them something good. He gave them something great, something that they had never had before, to show them how he would provide, because he's always faithful. Always faithful. And sometimes, like I said, we have to take a look in the mirror or look around and see, if we take the time to look at our lives and really what all the things that are going well, we'll see all the blessings that God has given us. We'll see that he's provided. And sometimes perspective, we need to change our perspective and not focus on the negatives, not surround ourselves with people that also focus on negatives, but focus on people, or surround yourself with people who focus on the positives, focus on all the things that we do have and not what we don't have. Because that's where we get in trouble, and that's where, again, we can get spiral down. So it doesn't matter, mad, hurt, confused, doubt. We can always turn to God and know that he will provide for us because he is faithful. Even if we're doing things we know we shouldn't, even if we make decisions we know that are against what God would want, he never leaves us. If you think like we're walking away from God, the instant we decide to make a choice and turn around, he is right there. He never leaves. Even if we don't see him working, can't feel him working, doesn't mean he's not doing something on our behalf. When we are distant, God moves towards you. Right? When we're lost, God will guide you if you'll let him. And that's the big thing, is we have to make those decisions to let him have that impact on our lives. So all in all, the Israelites ended up spending 40 years in the desert. Can you imagine what that was like? Sorry, this mic keeps... 40 years. So how many people have you guys anybody ever been out in Arizona or been, so we had a couple, or anywhere out west, there's some places that are a lot more dry. Or, hey, who's been here in Indiana recently until the last couple of days? It gets really dry, right, during the summer. I mean, I know my pond at home is down 2.5 feet. It's ridiculous. It gets really dry here, right? And sometimes it causes issues with breathing. It causes issues with allergies, with dust everywhere, right? And things blow. I mean, it's unreal. But out in the desert, the heat is increased. You have well over in the hundreds per day. And at night, it can actually get cold because the sun is gone and all the heat dissipates really quickly. But they were out there and God, it took them time. But they learned to trust God. And again, he provided for them daily. And if you think about the Lord's Prayer, what does he talk about there? One of the lines is, give us this day our daily bread. And what it teaches us is to focus on what we have today and that God is taking care of us today. That way we can put our past behind us and we don't have to worry about the future. We know we have the promise that God's going to take care of us on a daily basis. And he taught the Israelites this by giving them manna every day. The manna would disappear at night. They couldn't store it up and hoard it, right? It would decay and rot. He gave it to them every day just to teach them, and hopefully a lesson to us that we can rely on God's promises. They're new every day. And if we can teach ourselves that, if we can lean into that, it will help us with anxiety, stress, because God always provides, and he never changes. That's the beautiful part, is that he never, ever changes. The God that took care of the Israelites in the desert more than thousands of years ago, he's the same God who will take care of us today. So as we he surrounds us with community. He surrounds us with people. You got your small group leaders, you've got family, you got friends. He will bring people in your life that'll help support you in this endeavor. We're not meant to do it alone, but we do have to remember, you have the choice of seeing what kind of perspective you have. Are we going to choose negative? Are we going to choose positive? Are we going to trust God, look back at all the blessings he's had or he's given us in the past? So when it comes to here's some steps to help remember God's provision and faithfulness before we pray and break out in a small group. So the first one is remember where you've been. Okay, remember where you've been. Think about and maybe even write down the blessings that God has given you in the past, right? Or the blessings you currently have, right? So and think about that a little. Dwell on those. Let those thoughts permeate what's going on in your head, so that those become what you focus on and not the stuff you don't have. Remember that we don't know the future. Going back to he provided the manna daily so they didn't have to worry about the future. We don't know what our future holds. Only God does. And we know we have promises that he wants what's best for us and that he works for the good of all who love him. Right? So if we are trying to do our best to be faithful and follow God, he will be faithful as well, because he is a faithful God and he'll provide. Rely on your community. Again, like we said, God puts people in your life that you can rely on, that you can go to, talk to, that will support you, that will help you continue to grow and move towards a closer relationship with God and strengthening your faith. And then The last thing we do is like just remember that God loves you and will provide even in times of confusion or doubt. It does, and that He does not get angry or upset with us for having those questions. Right? It's okay to have questions. It's okay to have doubt. Just let those move you closer to Him as He provides answers. Right? Don't let them drive a wedge. All right, I'm going to pray and then get to our small groups.